Good evening, Minister. As you know, I am a proponent of having a referendum. And after listening to your presentation, you stated that in October 2013, the Mind Maps poll came back with a 70% approval rating of the question was, do you support casino gaming in Bermuda? My question is, why then, when you submitted the Referendum Act at the end of November 2013, the question changed to why do you favor the introduction of regulated casino gaming for the purposes of creating new jobs for Bermudians and encouraging hotel development when you already had a 70% approval rating for the exact same question that I had said it should be on the referendum?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Well, there was 69% support of the question, do you support casino gaming in Bermuda? And then there was a 74% support when the word hotel was put into the question. The government wanted to, and we had more data and we had more advice on this issue. We thought it was prudent to articulate the reason why we were bringing casino gaming. And the reason why the government was bringing casino gaming is for hotel development and for job creation. That's why we're doing it. That is our justification for doing it. And so we wanted that to be evidenced in the question. We recognize that some people took issue with that, but it's a moot point now because we're not going to have a referendum. But the reason why it was drafted that way is because we wanted to articulate the justification.
And thank you. Will the Mind Maps polls be made public?
I have no problem making them public at all. Again, there were three polls that were taken, and I have no problem in some way. I mean, we made one public today, but if you want me to make them public to you, Senator, or I could even table them in the House, I have no problem with that.
You can make them public however you feel necessary, but I believe the public needs to know what these polls said,
sure,
how they were asked, the demographic that was asked.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good idea. We can put them on our website. Website's now
yes.
gamingawareness.bm.
Yeah, good. Yeah, for those who are more technically savvy, that could be put up on our website and access to everyone who wants to get more information. Thank you.
Good evening, Premier, Ministers. I just have one question for Minister of Tourism. You said there's going to be 3 casinos, one in St. George, one in Hamilton, and one in Dockyard. Would you prefer to name the places where they're going to go?
We were just highlighting regions, so we haven't identified. Obviously, we want to have hotel development at the Club Med site. We certainly know that the Morgan's Point developers are interested as well. Whichever development has the greatest potential to get started as a result of a hotel license, then the government wants to get started. So, as I said earlier, we've seen 7 responses to date to the RFP in relation to the Club Med development. And so we think that that is a development where we can see a shovel in the ground, hopefully before the end of the year. But no actual properties have been identified.
The reason I ask that is because you can get new developments that can piggyback on the people that's worked so hard to get this going and get investment in Bermuda, and then we can be bypassed. I think then you'll be opening up a whole kettle of fish, because if Morgan's Point doesn't get it, and we've been fighting for this for now like 5 years, right? I mean, constantly. We would be some really mad people around here because we have a major, major investment. We've been trying to get that across. And I think you guys understand it. Maybe you just don't want to say Morgan's Point or Holiday Inns, but I would prefer, if it's in St. George, it's going to be the new development. I understand that. If it's in Hamilton, then who is it going to be? Because people invest in and want to invest, have a lot of money, and they're not going to do it anymore on speculation. You just can't do that. Right? I guess everybody's ear is going to be to the news or the radio tomorrow because of your first meeting. Where do we fit in this? Does it make sense, us going ahead? I think you should be more specific in all earnestness, because you've got people chomping at the bit, want to invest the money because they thought that gaming was going to be coming. Right? I have investors, or we have investors, that local people have put a lot of money in this to generate the jobs and keep the interest going. And I would be some kind of pissed off if somebody came in and jumped in front of us, and I can tell you I can go ballistic. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. We appreciate that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and panel. My name is Curtis Denzel Steve Simons. I'm the managing director of the Spinning Wheel and the CEO of Bermuda Gaming Hospitality and Training Center. I've also worked on the Niobe Corinthium, who had one of the first gaming opportunities here in Bermuda. And the government numbers are very conservative, ladies and gentlemen. Bermuda is going to make a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of job opportunities. But we have to assure Bermudians that they really will have skin in the game. And I'm asking the government, you promised 2,000 jobs, but at least Bermudians should be guaranteed in legislation to 75% of those jobs. And I believe you can give consideration to allowing people that have nonviolent crimes an opportunity to be on a probation system for maybe a year or two to work in the hotel, and then allow them to come into casinos, because we're going to disenfranchise so many people if we don't do this on this little small island. I personally envision us having people having to make reservations come to Bermuda 6 months in advance. If we're going high-end casinos, we'll have private yachts and private boats all over the island. And it's wonderful to bring in a name brand, but what sells is the product itself: hospitality, service, and expertise in your profession. And in the gaming industry, I went to the Atlantic City Gaming College, and I'm a croupier by profession. This is not rocket science. We can teach our people to work in the gaming industry, to be croupiers, security guards, cashiers. There's so many jobs that open. That's just in the casino industry, because that's where you want to be as a Bermudian, in the industry where the money is, where you can grow and maybe even have your own casino one day, if we still have a little property left and the opportunity to have a casino for a Bermudian, other than the Greens, which I applaud for coming in and doing what they're doing. But they have vision, and some of our government has vision, and that's why I believe they're going past the referendum stage, because I believed initially that if Bermudians were educated to the benefits of the gaming industry, that they would wholeheartedly embrace it. Now, the structure for gaming, I hope consideration will be given to the people grandfathered in that had the gaming industry initiated before, as Mr. Hunt and a few other people. But if that can't happen, at least give consideration to allowing people with liquor licenses to have some form of gaming on their establishment according to the floor space that they have. I mean, that's called, I believe, the cottage industry, and it's done in other places around the world. Doesn't have to be tacky, and they have to abide by rules and legislation just like they have to do to keep their liquor license. But those are a couple of things that hopefully that the government will give consideration to, and get a good consideration to allowing a young businessman to open up his gaming school in Bermuda before we bring in any other foreigners to educate us.
Thank you so much. And it's nice to know that you're already up and ahead of the game with regard to the education part of it. So, but I got to say, one of the most exciting things we saw was, and the minister and I had the opportunity to visit a training center, a training program in Singapore. And everybody you see in the casinos that are working, basically, you know, across the board, are all casino locals. And they set it up that way. That was part of the deal at the outset, and that will certainly be part of our deal at the outset. The thing with introducing this, of course, it's going to take a little time to build. The concept is you build it, they'll come. But the training of Bermudians to fill those jobs will take place, obviously, in advance of that. You're the expert, I don't know how long it would take. But we would get out in front of that, you know, whereby, and it's great to know that, you know, we would be saying to whoever's coming in, saying, hey, we have Bermudians that have the skill set to train these people. And we would, you know, look to have a training center set up in conjunction with people that we're going to bring in integrated training, advertise for those people. Of course, they'd have to meet certain requirements, but it will be imperative to get out and do that. To, you know, if you visualize it, maybe have them in the casino in pink Bermuda shorts and nice jackets and that type of thing with Bermudian flavor. And so that's part of the plan. That's what they did in Singapore. We like that. We saw how thorough the training center was. You know, they had people in there, we were watching them train, and, you know, with all kinds of things. They have people coming in and trying to fake cheat and all this stuff. And they train the police the same way as well. They have somebody, you know, that does that with regard to the police. So all that is certainly on the list for what we want to do. But glad you raised it. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, panel. My name is Sandy Butterfield. guess why I'm here. Even though it sounds very exciting and it sounds like we're going to generate a lot of money, I am getting a headache. Oh my goodness, this is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with because gambling is an addiction. If it was just for tourists, maybe not so alarming, but because Bermudians will be able to go and gamble, and paying $300 or $400 a week for a gambler to get in is chum change. That they will do that. There's going to be our little old ladies going there and spending the day. You've seen them in Atlantic City catching the bus and spending the hours there to spend all their financial assistance funds or their pensions. And then there's other concerns about how we will stop them. Doesn't confidentiality prevail here? Where how can we know who's on financial assistance? How can we get any of that information? That should probably not be allowed. I wouldn't want that to be met with me at the door, that you cannot come in because you're on financial assistance, or that my husband called to say I have a gambling issue, because we know how that can work. So my concern is the addiction part. Bermuda, basically, I believe that most of us have an addiction. And so we have a genetic history where we are already predisposed. Yeah. I mean, if we all left our cell phones home this evening, there probably wouldn't be half as many people in here because they'd be going home to get it. Yeah. Another addiction. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I hope I get as much applause for the answer. So, because that's a great question. So let me tell you how that has kind of been dealt with, where the model that we've looked at, and I can get into why we focused on the model that we did, because it's very important to understand why we've been there. But this is how we would propose that type of system would work. It's true, anybody can be addicted to anything. I got 2 cell phones on the table tonight, heaven forbid. But the way you address that is, technology is key. So in order to be able to game, and this is just the proposal, you would have to have a Bermuda registered gaming card. And you would have to apply for that, and you have to use that to get into the casino. It's like your passport, all right, if you're a gamer. And you pay for it. You can do the $2,000 a year, or you can have a registered gaming card and then pay $100 at a time you go. That's the concept. But in order to get that card, you have to qualify to have the card. So if you are in the categories that the minister mentioned, if you are paying child support through the courts and so on and so forth, or you're in arrears in your child support, you don't qualify. We'll have a whole list of people that would qualify. So you go along and you would say we have a place that we would do where you go and you can purchase your Bermuda gaming card. So guess what? If you show up at the casino, like the minister and I got turned away, and you don't have a gaming card, you don't get in. So there's no discrimination, there's no embarrassment for anybody getting turned away, there's no kind of you show up, they go, bah, you're out, you're not in because you're on, whatever. It's not. You have to apply to get that gaming card. So whoever has it, people may not have it because they chose not to have it, which a lot of people won't, and they may have it because, they may not have it because, they're on the list that they can't have it. But the people that have it, they'll get in. The people that don't have it won't get in.
Thank you very much, but I'm still...
That's a good answer.
But I'm still not quite clear as to where confidentiality lines have been crossed, so that if I go and ask for a card, are you calling financial assistance? Are you calling the Bermuda Credit Association? How do you know whether I can afford to come into the casino or not?
Sure.
Financial assistance will not give me the information about my clients. So how would they possibly be allowed to give you the information about going into a casino?
Well, the whole key, effectively, this is just concept, that application has to be made with the government. The government has that information. So you're going to have to go somewhere to a government office to get that, like getting a license. The government has that information, but we have the information, and we'd be able to say, now right away you're going to know that these are the people that can apply for a gaming card. That type of concept. So really, there's the list. Don't bother to go and apply if you know that you're 12 months behind in your child arrears, because you're not going to get it. So you'd have to hope there'll be a degree of self-determination, and I'm not going to apply because I know I'm restricted. But if you go along, there'll be checks and balances on a government system that would indicate hey, you're behind in your court fines.
Wow.
This type of thing, you know? So that's the concept, and that's how you deal with the confidentiality. There are things we have that are confidential. They're not being disseminated to the public. It's going like getting your license.
And we've actually, AG, we've actually seen, hold on.
Can we please be quiet and let the ministers answer? Thank you.
We've seen a similar system already in place, and we're trying to reinstitute it at TCD in conjunction with the courts. There was a time when if you owed money to the court, that information was sent to TCD, and you couldn't get a driver's license. So, you know, we have to use the technology, and we know that we have some work to do to make sure that all of this information is integrated and consolidated, but we have to use the technology to ensure that we have this information and to protect those individuals that, Ms. Butterfield, you're most concerned about. So we will be we have to be mindful about the confidentiality. That information will not get out to the public, but if that individual is not granted a license or granted the ID, and they know they should be excluded, and they still try to get in, and they get embarrassed, that would be their fault. But the government has a duty to make sure that we come up with policies that can protect them, and we think that the model that we've seen is very effective. Again, in Singapore, they've been able to keep it down to under 3% of individuals who fall into that category of problem gamblers. I know that there are people behind you, Ms. Butterfield, that have questions.
Good evening. My. I thank you, Sandra, for opening that subject. You talk about confidentiality. I'd like to talk about trust. You know that I'm a supporter of the original intentions of doing the right thing, and that is having a referendum to give this very significant issue, to let us address it as a public rather than to have a few individuals do so. Having said that, listening to the last few minutes and having practiced psychology and been director of social services here for a number of years, it sounds somewhat draconian, and I'm a bit unhappy with the fact that you all went down to Singapore. You know, Singapore is not a very free population. You know, I'm not sure if it's Singapore, but you know, they're rather draconian in their methods. When I hear you sit there and talk about confidentiality is good for some but not good for others, I personally have issues with anyone knowing some of this information. It's private, it's privacy. You all are saying, you know, we do this and we can do that, and having already let the population down by not fulfilling your promise earlier in time, how are we going to trust that this information is going to be used fairly? Personally, I can't. I can't trust it. My trust has been, your trust has been breached, my trust has been undermined, and I really have problems with this. Thank you.
Okay, noted. I guess, you know, we're in a situation of choosing between the worst of evils. It's not always an easy task. This is the road that we've gone down. I appreciate there are many people that you know, felt strongly about having a referendum. I was never one of them, but I mean, you know, the fact of the matter is that that was the course we looked at. The information you're talking about, that people have access to that now. Let's be real. If you go down and you want to get a driver's license, you're going to have to establish what your age is, and the authorities are able to check. We have information on people. That's part of public order. That's part of how we run our society. You have to be able to check the balances. Are you old enough to get a, you know, senior citizens pass? You know, are you of an age to get a license? You know, do you have the right qualifications for things? That's all information. It gets assimilated. People apply for things, and their information is looked at, and they're granted or they're not granted on the basis of the information that government has or records have or whatever. That's what it's about. So, frankly, I don't think there's any magic in that or any concern.
If I can add, AG, I appreciate, sir, your disappointment, and I think, the government wants to restore that trust. We do, and well, we have an obligation to do that, and sometimes promises are broken for the greater good, and we think in this case that's what was achieved. We think that we need to stimulate the economy. We need to get the thousands of Bermudians who are unemployed back to work, And so those were some of the considerations that we had to make. But I appreciate your concern. All of that information you're referring to is already available to the government. The minister responsible for social services is aware of who is under his program and the like. So it won't be a situation where people will have their private information disseminated. But, you know, if the government is not proactive in trying to protect those individuals who can find themselves in difficulty, then I think that's a greater challenge than issues with confidentiality.
Why is Singapore so important? How come you didn't go to Las Vegas?
Thank you.
Well,
Las Vegas is really big on the
the gentleman asked the question, why did we go to Singapore? And why not Las Vegas? We are not implementing, we don't want the Las Vegas model. We don't want the Las Vegas model. No, sir, we expect respect in here. I'll respect your question, and I expect you to respect me when I'm speaking. Las Vegas, we don't want Bermuda to look like Las Vegas. That's not what we're trying to achieve. We want to preserve the integrity of the Bermuda brand. We want to bring in high-end casinos in integrated resorts, have the casino contained on the hotel property. And we see that model in Singapore. We see that model in Aruba. But right now, the model that is held up as being the most effective is Singapore. Because, and you know, it's interesting, as a society, as you said, is so strict, their government made a decision. When we told them that we had 74% support, the AG in Singapore said, well, you're in a luxurious position, because they barely got 50% support there. But right now, the community recognizes the value. They've built opera houses. They've built so many different amenities in Singapore from the revenues of gaming that is benefiting the entire community. So I understand the challenges, but we cannot remain where we are. We have to progress, and we have to get competitive.
Could I just, I think, just let me put the Singapore thing to bed, if I may, all right? You know, I was very instrumental in why we picked that model. I researched it for some time. I had a committee looking at this to consider what the best models. Singapore went around for 2 years in advance of introducing their model. They're one of the newest gaming models, okay, in the world. They went around for 2 years to every jurisdiction looking at what the laws were and all the rest of it. Singapore is an old English colony. Its first language is English. Singapore in their legislation uses terms like common gaming house, which we have in our Bermuda Criminal Code. Singapore took basically the best of all of the provisions that they could find from all over the world and condensed it into their model and combined it with their regime. So it was just a sensible choice. It wasn't because it seemed like a neat place to go. Going to Las Vegas would have been a complete waste of time. It's American law. They don't apply the same type of structures. They don't have the same type of language. To try and craft it, particularly when you're doing legislation, ladies and gentlemen, one of the best way to go, and the way I always say to my team, is let's go out and find the best model. Let's go out and find the best example of this particular type of law. See what the pitfalls are with it. Who has a law that they've introduced recently that we want to introduce, and see what the problems are. And this is what you do. You exchange, you share information, you use what's working somewhere else. They simply had done a great job of pulling the best laws together from over the world, the best regime together, and putting it into a model. And guess what? We have the example of being able to look at that and say, hey, we can improve on that. This will be a bit different. We won't do that. They've amended some things already. We'll be able to get ahead of that. So it was a sensible choice. I stand by it. Anybody that wants to look at it carefully, it would be illogical not to support that decision.
Mr. Scott, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, panel. My question is that I listened to the presentation. I noticed that you used Bahamas as a example, a similarity. And one thing I noticed is that with the pros, that you gave the pros that went along with the Bahamian model, but there's one negative aspect that goes with the Bahamian model, is that after there was a decrease in the unemployment during the building of the casinos. However, in the years to follow, there was a dramatic increase in the unemployment because of the casinos taking away the market share and adding undue competition to the local and mom and pop shops. What would make the Bermuda model different from the Bahamian model?
Thank you, MP Lawrence. Well, we were not basing anything on the Bahamian model. The reference to Bahamas was simply those individuals on the East Coast that were traveling to the Bahamas just to participate in casino gaming. And so the recommendation to us was we can tap into that particular segment. There was about 100,000 people in 2013 who went to the Bahamas specifically for gaming. So we're not going to predicate our model on the Bahamian model at all. That's not the model we're looking for, although their casinos are in integrated resorts as well. But I think they have sort of what we call the gray market in Bahamas. There's a lot of operations in cafes and the like that currently exist that's non-regulated. We have to ensure that what we do here remains regulated. I don't know if there's anyone here that can help with order here. So no, the point is that the Bahamas reference was just with the travelers to the Bahamas. So we're not following Bahamas.
Okay. Well then, just to clarify my question, how can we, or how can the government guarantee, ensure that unemployment will not go up after the construction has finished?
It's a good question. I don't know if you're suggesting that we don't have construction and don't have development, which will certainly spur employment. I mean, the major development right now, which we all know is the hospital, is going to be coming to a close sometime this year, and the government wants to have another project going on so we can keep our people employed. Hopefully, before the end of that project, there could be other projects that will be in development as well. So clearly, if there's no other construction jobs going on after this particular development takes place, there will be a drop-off on construction jobs. But as I showed in the slide, there are also up to 900 ongoing jobs that will be created by the introduction of the integrated resort. People have to staff the hotel, they have to work there, as we said, administrators, you're going to have sales and marketing and the like. So this whole model and the introduction of this industry will generate jobs. There wouldn't be an increase in unemployment.
I guarantee you this, though, if we don't do something, employment isn't going to go up, and government doesn't have the money to keep financing building projects to employ, construction work. So the idea is that obviously you bring in, people from outside that are going to invest private money in order to stimulate it that way.
Good evening, panelists, MPs, senators. I don't want to come here to make any type of real statement, just to let the persons here tonight know that there is a choice if they would like to sign the petition for a referendum. It's circulating in the community. It's important. It gives the people the opportunity to call for a referendum, which is what the OBA government campaigned on, the right of recall, the right for persons to petition. I certainly believe at this particular time, based on whatever model you may have had in your enclaves, there's probably sufficient signatures to warrant what you had in mind when you said the people had the right of the power. But everyone here, a lot of you I've seen share with referendum or petitions that I've participated in over the last 30 years at various times have helped. And here's an opportunity for you tonight. If you believe in this issue that it should go to a referendum, or any other issue, because the government leaders are setting a serious precedent, then it's here tonight. You can sign it, and it's not for or against. It's about your right as people, to decide your future on serious issues, as was promised by all parties, and indeed this independent at the last election. So it's here tonight. I still have some space. I can go make some photocopies up the hill and run and get you a couple of more if I run out of sheets here. But the choice is for you. It's for you. Democracy, there's no price that you can put on your democracy. And when you do it, you've started on a very, very slippery slope. So I'm calling on my members of parliament to be the first to run out and sign this tonight. Because what concerns me, Mr. Panelist, is when I hear that you possibly could have a 3-line whip, means that with your numbers, the numbers have already been fixed if you can corral all your numbers in. So I would like for you to encourage people to support a referendum. That's my call. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, Minister and Premier and panel. My name is Marlene Bicchieri. I have just a couple of questions, please. The first one is, when you talk about the integrated casino, can you underscore or share with us, is it self-contained? And how do we know that the people who come to the casino will leave the casino and tour our island and enjoy our restaurants and see our sites? That would be my first question. And then 2, with the study, when people come and travel, how long are they staying? Those are my questions.
Thank you. It's a good question. The first question has been raised before. People get the concern that if there's all-inclusive, the individuals won't leave. What sets us apart, really, from other jurisdictions that have all-inclusive is that we are safe. We're still very much a very safe jurisdiction. And if you have the attractions, if you have quality restaurants, if you have other things, then they will leave the property. What we saw when we were in Singapore is people will go out to the other restaurants and the like. They want to get out. They want to see the country. That's all part of why they travel. Now, there might have been 100,000 people who travel just to game, but I'm sure when they get to that destination, they want to see the country as well. But most people who have gaming on their list of things to do, they go to a country, they want to see its culture, they want to experience, the restaurants and everything else, and they also want to know that if they want to participate in some of this entertainment, that they can. So we haven't seen, in some places like, and I don't want to call any names, but there are some jurisdictions, because it's not safe to go out and explore the country, then you find people contained on the all-inclusive integrated resort. That's not a situation that we have here in Bermuda. So if we do have an integrated resort here in St. George's, we all know they're going to want to go around and see this beautiful, quaint town and do other things. So that's not an issue that we've seen flagged. In terms of how long they're going to stay, I can't say. No one gave us that information. But what you will find is that individuals who travel to game normally are individuals who have greater net income, and then they stay longer, they spend more, and so I think that we will see a longer stay by these individuals.
I guess just to expand on that, it was more, we're not going to be promoting ourselves as a junket, come down for 3 days in and out and not see the rest of the island.
No.
Thank you.
We will be promoting Bermuda. Bermuda is a destination.
Well, thank you very much for your time and this forum tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you.
Hi, good evening to the distinguished panel. A couple of questions. Minister Crockwell, in 2013, during the Caribbean Week in New York, in one of your interviews, you gave an indication of the type of style of gaming that you were looking at for the island. One of the ones that you mentioned was the Monaco type high roller style. And in talking about the preventative measures that you alluded to this evening, you said, for example, if there were persons who had, and you used the example of someone who owed a high mortgage on their house, for example, was one of the things that you used in that particular interview in New York. And also if someone owed a lot of money to government, that they would be prevented. These were some of the things, they were not written in stone, that you were looking at. So my clarification tonight, when you talked about the protective measures that the government is looking at in order to protect Bermudians from themselves, so to speak, would you be looking into people's mortgages? Everyone in Bermuda, quite a few people do have high mortgages. Would that be a consideration?
No.
And then
can I just deal with that, Sherry, before you go on?
Yeah.
So that doesn't get legs. I never said that mortgages, if you have a mortgage, was part of the exclusion. I said that in the family exclusion policy, as an example, a wife may say, I fear my husband is spending the mortgage money. That's the only time I mention mortgage. So as an example, so and again, I think this might be the most controversial of the exclusion policy, but...
Actually, sir, I'll go back to the article. You said, for example, if someone has a high mortgage.
Oh, you're talking about the article? Okay,
I'm talking about the article.
No, it is not. It's not the intention.
At least that's the way it was reported.
Okay, no, it's not the intention for that type of information to factor into whether or not a person will be excluded. And if she has one more question, I'll take it.
Yes, sir. And in reference to the phrase that if someone owes a lot of money to government was another example that you used.
Okay, well,
can you expand on that?
Again, we are looking at all different types of possibilities in terms of how we can protect. We haven't come to a conclusion. So if indeed, that's why we're having this forum.
Okay.
So the mortgage issue is not in play, but certainly if there are money judgments against individuals, that is something that we're going to consider as being part of the exclusion policy.
So would that include business owners who are perhaps owe money to government as well, if you have a business interest?
It may.
Thank you.
It may. Thank you.
So I was just going to ask, when people are speaking, can you all please keep quiet? It's difficult for the ministers to hear. Thank you.
Just logically to that, though, Sherry, if I may, you know, if you're in a situation where you owe hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars in taxes to the government, and you know are sitting out there and not addressing it, I mean, clearly that would be something to consider. That might not be a person that you want to say, "Oh, here's your gaming card, and off you go to the casino." You know, just a consideration.
Mr. Richardson. Good evening, everybody. Obviously, the presentation has been very, very interesting, and you're bringing a lot of information to the forefront, so I appreciate that, and look forward to the rest of the presentations. My question actually is, I think, fairly basic or fairly fundamental in the context of pure numbers. Before tonight's presentation, one of my concerns was, what is the required critical mass for a successful casino? And then tonight, I think you indicated, I'm not sure if you specified, but you indicated potentially having, say, 3 casinos in Bermuda. And so my question is, who has done the work, or what is the number in terms of critical mass to make a casino successful?
The research was based on our current air arrivals from the tourists, and based on the assumption, and this was based on the innovation group's experience, that between 10 and 15% of the resident population will participate. So based on those numbers, there was no ceiling to say, okay, you need to have this amount if you want to have so many casinos. But based on the volume that we have now, the recommendation was that we can only sustain a maximum of 3. And again, because of our size, we're not talking about casinos on the same scale in terms of the size of other jurisdictions. I can't remember the exact table, the exact positions, but the numbers were based on the air arrivals and the resident population.
Right. And so, which begs the question, and forgive me for asking this series of questions, but it begs the question this. At the moment, there are probably, give or take, 7 major hotel properties either in existence or to be built. If you start, I'm thinking of, say, Club Med, Tuckers Point, or the rest of them going up towards Somerset, right? The challenge I would have is the critical need for Bermuda is jobs. And I am one that believes that if you build a hotel, it's the quickest way to create jobs because of the number of employees that's necessary to run a hotel is necessary. But if you're going to stop and say, well, we're going to give out 3 licenses, you may jeopardize the other hotel developments, which actually is, to some degree, potentially counterproductive in the sense that if you operate 5 hotels in Bermuda, you create, let's just say, 1,000 persons per job. That's 5,000 jobs being created. But by saying you're going to limit your licenses to 3, you may jeopardize the other 2, which is 2,000 permanent jobs. And so my question comes back to the beginning, which is, who has done the work to show us what's going to be required as a critical mass for each casino, and then have we done enough to make sure that what's being proposed will work? And if it doesn't work, what is the plan B, given that Bermuda, as you have said, everybody knows now that we have significant financial challenges that have to be addressed?
Is a loaded question, but I'll try to address it the best way I can in certain areas. Now, you may know that the Bermuda Hotel Association has been in support of this. And the reason, and they're in support of, even if we had one integrated resort come here, because if we get, and I'm just using this as a hypothetical, if we get a Ritz-Carlton built here in St. George's, and it's beautiful and it has all sorts of different types of amenities. Now, brands like the Ritz-Carlton fill themselves. Okay, right. They bring their own clientele to the jurisdiction. As I said earlier, some people only travel and stay in their preferred brand. Yeah. Now, but what happens is the jurisdiction gets greater exposure. That brand would market the destination, and then you will get this overflow. People will come to Bermuda because of the entertainment, of the casino. Once that hotel is full, you will find that more people will be coming, and they're going to have to stay somewhere. What happens with the Fairmont, you will find that most of the hotels in Bermuda do well once Fairmont is full. Yes. Because then you have that overspill. So there's no real concern that if there's just one or there are limited licenses, that those who don't get them, and I'll just say right now, there are a lot of hoteliers who are interested in them. But the government has to create criteria to make sure that the model works. So we're not the experts in gaming. So that's why we went out and hired the innovation group, who was hired by the previous administration as well to provide the data. And their recommendation is, based on the existing numbers that you have, you can have this many licenses. To disregard that advice based on the current numbers and have a saturation where these casinos would not be successful, I don't think would be wise. So the view is that if you have something that would entice people to the island, they will stay. They will stay in other properties. The brand will bring in their own guests, and as they say, all boats will rise with the tide. So the view within the hotel community is that this is a good thing, because if we can get more attention, get excitement about the jurisdiction, then everyone will benefit.
Okay. I would say thank you. With the final comment, though, is just that from what you've explained, right, is that potentially Bermuda will not then see a hotel, or the three, at least three that's being planned right now, which would be in St. George's, as you're talking about, the one in Hamilton, and then Mr. Hunt's one, of course, up in Morgan's Point, and then any future development by the Green family or otherwise. I guess that would be my concern. But I do look forward, again, to more information and the rest of your presentation, so thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Minister, I just have a question with regards to the hospitality industry. You mentioned a number of items up there, including, I think it was 1,000+ jobs initially. Do you have the stat as it relates to the numbers that are in hospitality across the board, as the minister?
Not that's currently employed in hospitality?
Yes.
No, I can get it, though.
What would be the breakdown between Bermudian versus non-Bermudian?
I don't have it at my fingertips.
Because one of the concerns I have, it's fine that we're going to generate 1,000+ jobs, but what is the breakdown of that 1,000+ jobs between Bermudian and non-Bermudian? It is, of course, a big sell because people are looking for employment opportunities. But if we only get a smidgen of the jobs that are available in this 1,000+ number, then I don't think this is a route to go down. Can you provide any feedback on that?
I can tell you it's not going to be a smidgen. I can tell you that.
Well, if I had the hospitality number, then I could see, because everywhere I go in hospitality, the number of Bermudians that are there compared to the non-Bermudians is significant. Yeah. And I would think if statistics applies, we're going to have a similar situation here.
Yeah. Well, we are hoping that this can start to reverse that trend, because there's a perception that Bermudians are not in the hospitality industry because they're not being allowed to be in the hospitality industry, but you'll recall that for some time it was a discouragement of Bermudians going into the hospitality industry, yes. And then of course these employers had to find people to work in their establishments. From what we've seen is that Obviously, there will be initial construction jobs. So the 1,000 that you saw, that was in relation to the actual construction. And the government is committed to making sure that Bermudians get to work on the project. Obviously, there's going to be expertise that's going to be required that we may have to utilize foreign labor and expertise as well. In terms of ongoing, we want to have Bermudians staff this integrated resort. We want to train them in the casinos. I had an interesting experience when I was in the Bahamas, and I was talking to the tourism minister of Bahamas, and he said that 93% of those who work in the casinos are Bahamian. And he said it's one of the best paying jobs. So I said, well, how much do they get paid? He said, well, they get paid $350 a week. So I said, he saw my reaction. I said, well, how is that the best paying job? He said, just go and check out one of the tables. And I went and I was sitting around the blackjack table for 2 hours, and that dealer in that 2 hours made $400 in tips. Made more than her weekly salary. It was a female, made more than her weekly salary in the 2 hours. So what I'm saying is that there are opportunities. We have to work together to make this work for Bermuda. The government can't guarantee a lot, but I can tell you that the intention of the government is to create these opportunities for Bermudians. Now, if Bermudians don't wish to avail themselves of some of the opportunities, there's nothing we can do about that, but we have to create the opportunities, and I believe that there's a shift. We've seen a shift. Bermudians are going back into the hospitality industry as a result of the downturn of the economy, but we have to make sure that we set up the policies in place that makes it attractive to them.
Wouldn't it be also a good idea to in tandem, because this project you're talking about, we're looking at, what, 2016, 17, you mentioned?
Completion.
Completion, yes. Yeah. So in tandem with that, could we not mount a campaign that encourages Bermudians back into the hospitality industry?
Yeah, well, we will mount a campaign. We're going to have a jobs fair.
No, I mean not for casino, just for I'm talking about now.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, so we want to have a jobs fair now so that we can educate the population about what jobs will be available. Because a lot of people just don't know the job opportunities that will be available. And then if they're interested in starting to get training so they can be ahead of the pack, then that's going to be provided as well. So we have every intention of that being part of the education program.
Okay, and just a final comment. You mentioned Bahamas in terms of the fallout, so to speak, from Bahamas if we were to create this destination here. My concern with the presentation is that we went to Singapore and we got everything that worked, so to speak. But there's no information that has been provided from a jurisdiction that has similar demographics to Bermuda as it relates to the fallout, the social ills, and so forth. So I applaud the fact that we want to follow the best practice model. But what we have to be careful of is that Singapore is a long way away from here. They think differently, they do things differently. And having spent 3.5 years over there in Korea, I can appreciate the dynamics involved. So we have to be very careful in presenting to the Bermuda public a best practice as it relates to Singapore, but not looking at all of the elements as it relates to a country that has similar demographics as Bermuda.
That's a valuable point, and if I can just so you know, I mean, we've looked at we've received data and information about all of the aspects of this. One particular jurisdiction was very interesting in Italy, and the region is Pavia, and they are making the government is raking in quite a bit in terms of revenues from gaming, but they've seen a spike in social issues there. And the reason why is because everywhere you go in this area, you can find an electronic gaming machine. Whether it is the gas station, the supermarket, the cafe, you name it. There was such a proliferation of electronic gaming machines that gaming became the norm rather than the exception. It wasn't the thing that you did on a special occasion, it was everywhere. And because of that in-your-face situation, they found that the residents were just constantly engaging in gaming. So we're not going to do that. We will maintain the integrity of the jurisdiction, the brand of Bermuda, and that's why we chose the integrated resort model. We want to contain it, and we want it to be the exception, particularly for residents, rather than the norm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, all ministers. I definitely encourage the project up at Morgan's Point. I definitely encourage it there. I would love to see transportation provided coming and going from that area there. no one had to be stuck right in Hamilton just to do one thing, or in St. George's. So I'm hoping that Morgan's Point gets something there. Yes, Somerset, yes. Number two, I was in an English city about 13 years ago and went to the hotel. I couldn't, as a resident, I couldn't just walk off the street and go into that hotel to game. It had to be 3 days for doing it. So I'm encouraged by this gaming card that you all speak about. Hopefully it will be good and practical. And on that there, well, a person had to sign a waiver to say that you have the right to dig into their financial personal history for that gaming card?
Good question. I mean, as I said, the concept, right? Obviously, we have to refine these, but the concept, as I see it developing, we've seen a system that potentially has the ability to work, is a lot of the information on the people that would be on the no-go list, let's call it that way, would be contained, in government records and so on. So, it's a case of, as I said, when they go and apply for that card, that information is there. But also the warning would be out to the individual, like, need not apply if you fall into this type of category. So, but waivers are always good things. So if it falls into a position where we'd consider some type of waiver, then maybe so. But I don't necessarily see that right now. No.
Okay. And my last thing is, I'm encouraged by Mr. Simon's mention about a school, a local school for teaching the aspects of gaming. So
great idea.
Very encouraging.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, 10 minutes left. Hold on, we'll just see if there's anyone else first. 10 minutes.
Just good evening. I personally am against gaming, but the question that I have, though, is if I'm staying at Clearview Guest House as a guest, what do I need as a tourist to get into the gaming facility if it's at a fixed location, let's say a Holiday Inn? What identification would those people need if they're going to be going from one tourist resort to another, right? Because I understand, what I don't understand is that the people who are going to gaming are those people who are looking to improve the lot. And if their lot is not being improved at the bottom end, I don't understand people with money just going to play and losing the money for fun. So if those people who are in guest houses or smaller units or smaller properties, will they be given some sort of identification that will allow them to get into the gaming?
Yeah, thank you for that. No, Singapore model is a good one on that. Passport stamped, shows you're a guest. You come into the country, immigration stamp. Security has to be, and it is there, it's very important. It's very, very well done, they're very polite and all the rest of it, but it's very thorough and like it should be anywhere. So somebody from that position, sure, you want to encourage tourists to go, it's important. It's a part of the whole attraction of coming to Bermuda. Not everybody will want to stay at a resort like that. They might want to stay at a small guest house, but sure they want to go and have a flutter on a bit of a game. Take their passport, it gets checked on coming in. We saw how this system works. We got all that much down. You just line up. It's almost like going to the theater, I guess. You line up in the stations. They check the passport. They check the stamp. So we know that you're a visitor to the island because you'll have the immigration stamp and you'll have your passport. So that one, I hope, is an easy solve. But great question. Thank you very much.
There's one city I know in Canada, in Saskatchewan, called Regina, and they were one of the last cities to adopt gaming. Did you look at any of the places in Canada, and also did you look at a national lottery? Because currently 2 betting shops, Triple Crown, Seahorse. Triple Crown sells the Caribbean lottery, Seahorse sells UK lottery. Did you guys look at those as another revenue stream?
Yes, thank you.
Because I know those aren't licensed to sell lottery, but they do sell them.
Yeah, I'm sure they're really pleased that you let me know that.
Well, we knew that.
They might want to have the public announcement.
We knew that.
I noticed you didn't say your name when you came up to the mic.
Yeah. We did look at some of the models. As you know, in Canada, they have a very large casino in Montreal. That's sort of the standalone. And then there's also, I believe there's a Fairmount in somewhere in Ontario that's doing very well, actually. Obviously, we didn't go there, but we've been told that it is doing very well there as an integrated resort. In terms of the other question, we plan on addressing gaming holistically. We're not going to just deal with casino gaming. The legislation is going to really deal with gaming across the board. And of course, in order to get into any type of gaming, you're going to have to procure an operator's license. But we do see the value of a national lottery in terms of revenue, and the government is looking at that right now. And we are aware that lottery tickets are being sold right now. But that is another possibility for us to raise revenue. Any other first-time questions? Okay.
I have the mic, so I guess I'm first in line. I've been on the Hotel Association for a while, and I've heard the big boys, you know, Fairmont, et cetera. We have a very small property, 2 small properties, and I appreciate the question about Clearview and other individuals on the island. The Hotel Association has been, I think it's fair to say, unhappy with the way the Department of Tourism has managed tourism in Bermuda. And they've been hoping for, working toward, having a Bermuda Tourism Authority for as long as I can remember. Finally, that's happened. And now we have an incredible powerhouse of individuals on the Bermuda, on the Tourism Authority. They're not yet really in action. And I'm wondering, in the last 4 years, we've had a worldwide depression. All of us have been hurt very, very hard on the island. Not everyone here. Many of the tourist properties have gone under. And I guess I'm wondering, why are we jumping on the bandwagon for this, what I see as a somewhat risky and risk-filled solution, when we have the Bermuda Tourism Authority looking to come onto line this year, in April, I believe, May. Why not give them an opportunity to see what they can do with the island's tourism? I know that they support casinos because they too want a quick fix. But once we get into this mode, and I just heard you say that you're looking not only at casino gaming, but you're looking at other types of gambling. And you know, I see this sort of infiltrating out into those areas that you've said have been counterproductive. Italy, for example. I really would encourage the island to look at, and perhaps they can do it through the referendum, but or through speaking to their MPs, to see if the Tourism Authority can't really do something effective, because what's been going on up until now has been very confusing. You have one Minister of Tourism come on, he has some great ideas, he tries to implement them, they may or may not work. Next thing you know, there's a shift in the process, and there's another minister. And I think this is why the Tourism Authority has been encouraged. So why not give them an opportunity to do something with our tourism? Thank you.
Thank you. We recognize that casino game is not going to be the panacea. The Tourism Authority sees it as a tool to assist in their efforts to increase air arrivals. We are approaching this. The Tourism Authority is one component. We believe, I agree with you wholeheartedly, we have to change the structure and the management of tourism in Bermuda. And we also have to have hotel development. We have to have new inventory. We have to have, you know, a reason for for tourists to come to Bermuda. They're not coming. They're just not coming. And so we cannot continue to just keep doing what we've been doing for the last 20 years and expect the same results.
Sir, final question.
Okay. I'll try and be brief without any lengthy speeches. First of all, thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity to express my choice as to whether I game or not, potentially in Bermuda. I was just going to say thank you for affording me my choice as to whether I game or not. I just say it's constitutional. Thanks for giving me my choice. But my question is this, more from a logistical perspective. I fully appreciate your initial view of restriction of 3 licenses, your initial view of doing 1 license first, let's see how it goes before the other 2 get granted. What my question is let's sort of say you give the initial license to property A that already exists. You now have a developer that comes along, let's sort of say the one in St. George, and say, you know what, I'm not going to develop here unless you give me the license. So they're using it as a leverage tool, okay, but you've already given your one out, okay? What is the length of time that you foresee seeing how it works before granting the second one? And then what would you say to a potential developer who comes in and sort of says, yes, I want to develop, but I'm going to do it on the condition of being granted a license?
Yeah, very good question. And we stated in the presentation that we want to reserve that first license for new development. The objective is to get new hotel development in Bermuda, create jobs for Bermudians and the like. We are looking at what an appropriate period will be, but the prospective developer will know that the government may issue up to 3 licenses. But we recognize that individuals who are going to be investing $300, $400 million in Bermuda want to have an opportunity to get a decent return on that investment. So this is why we have to do it properly. We just can't go out there and issue out licenses and then we lose the incentive to bring in new development in Bermuda.
I appreciate that. So let me just then reverse that scenario. So you've got the new developer, given him the license. He's coming online 2017, just by your own, current estimations. Again, you've got a period of time as to, let's sort of see how this is working. So now we're looking 18, 19. What do you say to a current hotelier, let's sort of say Elbow, who sort of says, you know what, gosh, you guys got to give me that license or I'm going to close it down? How do you deal with that?
That's why we're engaging the hotels right now. Obviously, we don't want to lose anyone, and we're very sympathetic to those hotel owners that have been here and been long suffering here. But again, based on the conversations that we've had, they recognize that bringing in new development, bringing in a new brand, bringing in that new excitement is good for the industry. They appreciate that. And we're going to have criteria. We're going to have criteria, for example, there may be a room number, a room capacity criteria. So not every hotel property will qualify off the bat. So as we move forward, we will develop these issues. But the questions that you're raising are real questions that as the government we're going to have to deal with going forward. Because everyone wants the opportunity to make more revenue, but we have to make a decision that's best for the country, for Bermuda, not just one particular property.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to wrap it up now. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. And again, you can go on our website. If you did not ask a question tonight and you want to come to the next one, that's going to be at Pier 6 on Thursday night. And then the third one, in terms of this presentation, will be at St. James Church next week, Thursday. I don't know the date, if someone can help me out. The 13th. So thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate your support. Thank you.